WFA is a league where your branding is everything. With that being said, with the league rotating through different owners and everyone wanting their own branding, it can make things a bit crazy and confusing as the league moves forward. So it only seems right that going into our 8th season, I gave a quick rundown on every team's history and how we got to where we are today. So make sure to buckle your seatbelts because after a long time away, it's time to get back to the time machine. I'm going to start this one off easy with one of the most consistent teams in the league and the person that forced me to make this video, Jake and the Green Bay Wolfpack. The Wolfpack have been around since Season 1 and their infamous 0-9 campaign, but have risen to become one of the best known franchises in the league. The only things that have changed about the Wolfpack are a few logos and Jake's desperation to win a championship. The Wolfpack haven't had a season under 500 since Season 3, but have ended each season since Season 2 with a playoff loss. Maybe this is the year that changes, but then again, looking at their history, maybe it's not. The other team that has made it all the way from Season 1 relatively unchanged is the New Haven Lancers. While they have had a lot less success when compared with the Wolfpack over the past few seasons, they did make it to the first ever championship game. Since then, they have not been able to secure another playoff victory, as they remain an outsider to the championship picture. But for owners Ryder and Daly, their rebuild is in full swing. Their only change has been one logo redesign that many consider a downgrade, while the team has gone also in that direction. The Rapid City Falcons were really known for two things: inconsistency and their franchise star, Hugo Zachary. Over their 5 years as a franchise, they were not able to put two back-to-back winning seasons together as ownership struggled to put a competitive team on the field. Their only bright spots, including their two-time MVP, began to struggle as playbooks began to be introduced into the league. The whole team was reset after Zach took over in Season 5, first with the departure of Hugo and then the introduction of the brand that we know today, the Des Moines Corn Kings. While the Corn Boys are another team without championship gold, perhaps Hugo's return to the franchise will help get them to the promised land. The Indianapolis Cyclones are an often forgotten franchise at the beginning of our history. They never had a winning record in 3 seasons and didn't really have much to gloat about. They were then moved across the country and became the Oakland Venom for another forgettable season that ended at 6-10. They wouldn't stay long as they got a new look with their new ownership as they became the Portland Cougars in Season 5 and finally made the playoffs under the watchful eye of the mysterious Cavalry Kid. After that, they picked up and moved to Wyoming and became the Cavalry, and that is where they are today. What's next for the Cavalry and their kid leader? Only time will tell. The New York Grizzlies were a franchise that was built on excellence behind Chris Cologne. A team with a lot of talent, sometimes more than the cap would allow, this was a team you could count on being in the playoffs every season. The Grizzlies had 2 12-4 seasons in years 3 and 4, but were not able to capture the title. Then, the wheels fell off the train as the team moved south to Cape Charles and became the Pirates. They fell out at 1-11 and were put under new ownership. They spent Season 7 as the Virginia Marauders and didn't do much, so they were shipped off to London to become the Spiders. Now it's up to returning Matt Lee to bring the power back to this franchise. There are 3 more originals left, but these teams only made it through Season 6. There are 2 two-time champions in the league, and they are both in this category. My Jackson Crabs came into the league as a stinker and were only better than the Wolfpack, but after 1 season, they figured it out and won back-to-back championships under quarterback Travis Matthews and Okc Lightning. They never had the regular season success, but once the playoffs rolled around, they showed what they could do under pressure. After custom playbooks were introduced, however, the magic started to wear off, and the Crabs' final 2 seasons in the league were a combined 7-17. While it wasn't the fairy tale ending that they were hoping for, the Crabs will always loom large in the history of the game. The other 2-time champion was originally titled the Richmond Renegades. After going 5-4 in the first ever season, they made a few upsets on their way to claiming the championship. The Renegades were around for 3 seasons before being rebranded to the Pittsburgh Steel and an 11-5 season in their only season in the league. Then they became the New Orleans Voodoo, and continued their success, winning the Season 5 championship after killing the juggernaut Wolfpack. While Season 6 was Joel's last season as an owner, you cannot deny his all-encompassing greatness in putting together a roster and a playbook while also keeping the league afloat for many years. Definitely a Hall of Famer in my book. The last of the original franchises is where some of the convolution begins, so try to keep everything straight in your mind as the video moves forward. This franchise started as the Wichita Pride, led by the infamous Smith. They went 7-2 in this season, but came up short in the playoffs, somewhat causing this tailspin of indecision from its owner. In Season 2, they became the Yakima Yeti, and didn't perform as well as the previous team did, causing Smith to give up for just long enough to ship off this franchise elsewhere. Don't worry, he'll be back. In his place was Logan and the Chicago Ghosts. The Ghosts and Logan had already been in Season 2, I'll also get back to that, but because of Smith reasons, he was sold to the Yeti and held on to it for the remaining 4 seasons they were in existence. The Ghosts had their ups and downs, including winning the Season 4 championship and completing the Commissioner trifecta of champions, but following it with a 1-11 campaign just 2 seasons later. Smith will always leave a stench wherever he is, but the Ghosts did a good job of erasing that and turning it into something great. There were 4 teams disbanded going into Season 7, and the last one was a Season 2 expansion team by the name of the Omaha Marshalls. I'll just be honest because there isn't much to be said, the Marshalls were always awful. They went through owner after owner and had a rotation of talent in and out, but they only had one fluky winning season and were otherwise a disaster of an organization. If any team had to go, I was glad it was them because they were so pitiful for so long. Rest in peace. I made a promise, and we did get back to Logan's Ghost Gang. After he left to pursue some big life things, the black and white version of his team was handed off after Season 2 and became the Sioux Falls Spirits in Season 3. While they weren't here for long, their 10-6 record and some awesome jerseys really left their mark. Then they were shipped off to Phoenix to become the Fighters. The Fighters never became true contenders, but they also had very memorable jersey sets that I wish would make a return. This past season, they were rebranded once again, this time becoming the Boston Whales. The Whales didn't really get started, but now with the reset, the sky's the limit for what their defense can do. Alex Darr and his Michigan-based franchise has been another mainstay since Season 2. They began as the Flint Firebirds, and they were about as successful as the Marshalls were, with a hint of class. Darr hasn't been able to get his team above 500 in his 6 seasons, and he hasn't ever really seemed like a threat. Season 6 gave the Firebirds a bit of a facelift as they transitioned and became the Detroit Fury. Of course, we all hope that this is finally the year that this franchise puts it all together. The final Season 2 expansion team was the Honolulu Wyverns. They were led by Mr. DB, and he remains their owner to this day. This is one of the most successful franchises as they haven't had a losing season since their first year, but they are another team looking for their first championship. They became the Memphis Tribe in Season 4 and have made several moves that have changed the way teams are built, including being able to develop Jamie Spencer. DB's coronation will be very soon if this trajectory continues. Season 3 expansion begins with an easily forgotten team called the Okc Lightning. They were in the toilet bowl and obviously didn't have a lot going for them. They moved to LA the very next season and became the Mambas in honor of Kobe's passing. However, they became the poster child for WFA teams not being able to stay in California as they moved to Salt Lake the following season. The Vipers had 2 really solid years before bottoming out last year. Now that the league has taken them over, they remain in limbo until a new owner comes calling to get them to where they need to be. It's been a few minutes since we talked about Smith, so it's time to talk about him and his third different franchise, the Tokyo Titans. The Titans were the end result of a scheme to get a new roster under the guise of charity, and he didn't even get a championship out of it. In usual Smith fashion, his decline was imminent. His expansion roster went 11-5, but just 2 seasons later, he was 3-9 and kicked out of the league, taking his awful jerseys with him. He was replaced by a man who has since dominated the league, getting back-to-back championship games and winning his first ever appearance. Colin Pierce and the Montreal Berserkers are a team to fear, and they will continue their domination in Season 8. This next franchise is known for mediocrity and overall toxicity, as its first 4 seasons are completely out of control. It started out simple enough with a team that was just bad, with only a few bright spots and not much to write home about. Jaga Bettis was the whole offense for the Houston Toros, as they were never able to hold on to a coach for very long, causing them to not be able to build anything. Then we added Tom and the Toronto Reapers to the fold, and he rage quit after a disappointing 5-7 season. And then came the infamous Scott Stover and the Oklahoma Regulators. Surprisingly, Scott knew what to do and how to win, and took control of the roster and got it to 10-2, but he was dismissed due to his inability to keep his mouth shut. The team made another move, this time to Kansas City, to become the league's second iteration of the Cyclones, and while they had a bit of success, I can't wait to see what they bring to the table this year. The last Season 3 expansion team is one that, without looking back, I can only think 2 things about: the New Orleans Gamblers. They took my advice and used a letter for their logo, and they had Brad Sorensen as their quarterback. They had a mediocre season and were picked up and moved to Miami the next season. Miami was a middling franchise, most known for their awesome branding, "You're welcome, world." After 2 middling seasons in Miami, they made a branding trade with a hometown boy that we will get to later, and traded in the Nightmares to become the Jamaica Hummingbirds. While we laughed about it for a few days, the Hummingbirds have grown on us. And while playoff success hasn't been there quite yet, they have the roster to succeed and should be pretty scary moving into the future. We have just 4 teams remaining, and all of these come to us from the Season 5 expansion to 20 franchises. We will start with a franchise with a lot of success behind it, but a lot of change as well. They started as the Colorado Clash and had a really great season, only marred by the fact that their owner disappeared, causing the team's downfall in the playoffs. Then came the Legend of Hammer, as he moved the team to San Diego and made them into the juggernaut offense that we know as the Gulls, making it to the title game but ultimately coming up short in the end. Then he moved to Victoria, where they became the Vanguard and had even more success, this time winning the Gen Bowl, and without its leader at the helm no less. They were then gifted to young Nolan Pierce, and became the Charleston Federals. Will Nolan be able to challenge his brother in this now sobering rivalry? I guess we'll just have to see. The Charleston Swamp Foxes found a way to have 2 different owners in their one and only season in the league. Art Vandelay took over as quarterback and owner mid-season before doing that mentioned brand swap. They became the Miami Nightmares and had 2 pretty solid seasons, but weren't able to bring back QB Vandelay to his MVP form. As they are now in the hands of a man called Coco, it's time to see what they will look like after a pretty crazy offseason. Next up is the Tri-Cities Fever. They were very bad. That's pretty much all. At 1-11, they had one of the worst records ever, which can be expected from an expansion team, but other teams have found ways to win that these guys couldn't. They became the Pottsville Maroons and became something a little better. They are still rebuilding and have made a lot of changes along the way, but they did have a solid playoff run this year, and if they're able to keep things rolling, they should be a contender very soon. One of the teams that was really much better than they should have been was the 8-4 Vegas Gamblers. They had Vincent Morris, for crying out loud. Anyway, they lost in the playoffs, then became the Louisiana Steamers. The Steamers are known most for drafting Colin Pierce and allegedly stealing the Wolfpack's color scheme. They haven't had a losing season in franchise history, which is surprising, and that could continue looking at the roster that they have, and I'll be excited to see if they can take that next step and win a championship. So that's it! Did you make it this far? I barely did. There are a few topics that have been brought up to me as ideas for my next video, but if you have any ideas, let me know. If you are new, join our Discord and become a part of the community. And if you aren't new, thanks for watching. And see you next time on Time Machine.